My name is Jin D. I am a program manager at the International Women's Media Foundation currently. I came to the US in 2011 as a student. I enrolled in a dual degree program at the State University of New York College in Portland. And I spent half of my master degree in upstate New York, and then the other half in London. I have a sport journalism background, but I studied sport management in America. Afterwards, I kind of, stayed in journalism industry, worked for NBC News, NBC Sports, and Pulitzer Center, and now at my current position. Really glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Jane, for making your time on this podcast.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, actually, Jean and I had the first conversation about, where I proposed Jean to be in our podcast like 8 months ago. But then because you are based in DC and we are based in New York, so it did not seem to be possible. But now with the pandemic, we know that everything is possible virtually as well. So we are making the most out of this scenario, this current situation, and we are finally able to get your time in the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I still remember vividly of us having the first conversation, and I can't believe, I switched the job right after we had that conversation. It's been 8 months.
Yeah.
And I can't believe how fast the time travels. At the same time, we've been in lockdown for 3-4 months now, and it's unbelievable.
Right.
Yeah.
And Jane, how are you holding up with this current pandemic?
I think it's very interesting for me because as a Chinese, my entire family are in China. So I literally, this is my second round, everyone is, for you guys are the first round, but I was closely watching what happened in China since January. And, my family went through the whole lockdown period, and I was very worried for them. Middle of the night, I would check the numbers in China, and I would be on my phone reading news, cannot sleep. That was in February for me. And then in March, my family are able to walk around in China, and I started the lockdown. So it's round 2 for me, and I don't know how I feel about that because it's slowly getting to a point that I'm just so sick of being at home every day. I just don't want to resume normal activities, but it's not safe.
We hope things get back to normal at the earliest possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting that every other country are talking about the second wave, but we're still in the first wave in America. And, with protests are going on, and with, elections are coming up. I just don't think we're going to get out of it this year until there's a vaccine, which I hope the vaccine will come very soon.
Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Right. Now let's get into our podcast.
Right now, you're working as a program manager at International Women's Media Foundation. So what does your role and duties as a program manager is at your organization?
International Women's Media Foundation is an nonprofit organization that support women journalists through training, through grants, through awards, and just giving more opportunities to women journalists that are currently probably not traditionally being given to them in the past in media. My role there as a program manager, I primarily just oversees all their grants and award selection processes, and also running the program that are related to grants and awards.
Jin, when you were new in the United States, how difficult was the process, or how easy was the process of navigating your path to make a career in the United States in the sector you are interested in?
I think I always had this problem of I want to do something, but I just could not get there with the immigration status, with the limitation of my language abilities in the early days, and with limited resources we have as immigrant. So when I first came to America, even though with the journalism background in China, I initially thought I would be mostly doing sports and a management job, which is really what I wanted to do after my master degree in international sport management. But unfortunately, that was not possible at the moment, just because, it's really hard first, it's really hard for women to get a job in sports. And then like a woman of color, and also at the same time, I'm a foreigner. I'm not really I don't really understand American sports as well, because America do like the major sports, most of them are not as internationally accepted, adopted as well. So I grew up, with soccer, with, just all the things that are not in major leagues.
Right.
That was a really hard start, that eventually I turned back to journalism. Which is, sort of kind of, I tried to walk away from journalism at the beginning and it didn't work. So I leaned back to kind of my comfort spot, which is journalism.
Mhm.
I definitely think it was difficult, no matter what, just being, not in a STEM field as an immigrant, being able to even just to get an H-1B visa was difficult. And I'm not a full-time journalist, so I don't really, I don't even have the chance to publish as much to be qualified for O1 visa. I think visa was a huge burden on me for over the years, even until today. So yeah, I think it's a difficult start. Definitely, I don't want to live through that time again.
Right. How did you set your foot in the professional, scenario in America?
I was very fortunate to receive the help from my university using our alum network in the beginning. That was how I landed my first internship at NBC, which was through alum network and the professor's recommendation. Basically, they hold my hand, which I still until today I would say I owe SUNY Cortland for everything. They had the best international students program. They supported every one of us, through every step, and just learning how to write cover letters, write resumes in English, that are suited for American jobs. That's a learning experience. And then, learning how to secure a job, how to do the job interviews, and being able to get my first internship at NBC was a huge, lift from the weight lifted from my shoulder, because without that, I would say I don't even have a chance to even stay in America to do journalism.
Right. And do you remember how you cracked that internship at NBC?
I remember. I think it's so funny because I actually, 2012, I was in London and I worked for a Chinese newspaper, which also is the same one that I used to work for before I left to China as a Olympics correspondent. Just to basically, they were taking advantage that I was already in London for school, and I have been working with them. They know my work history. So they hired me as the Olympic correspondent. So with that knowledge, I was naturally a fit for the NBC Sports position, to understand their market, because NBC is the Olympic channel for American audience, and I know Olympics better than a lot of my competitors. At the same time, my background in journalism, which suits very well with what they do as a sport news network.
So that was in the year 2013 when you were interning at NBC Sports, right? And coming this far to today, which is 2020, you are working as a program manager. The reason I'm looking this side is because I have my notes on this side of the screen. So today you're working as a program manager at the International Women's Media Foundation. So, Anuz and I, we were talking to each other, looking at your rich profile of experiences. One can see that you have, you started your career in sports journalism. You did your graduate program in sports management, which I had no clue that there could be a degree in sports management as well.
It is very new for Chinese. So when I came to the States in 2011, I think China only have probably 2 programs in sport management. And back to then, I probably only know a handful of Chinese who have done sport management degree overseas in America.
Oh, I see. Okay. So basically, over the time, you have, kind of switched your gears around different facets of communication and media. You're still in media and communication, but you're playing around with different kinds of roles, like higher positions and different kinds of challenges. Like, for example, you have been, going around taking new roles in marketing, as a project coordinator, as a marketing coordinator, then as a communications manager, and now as a program manager. So I was just curious to know, how you decide when is the right time for a new switch.
The switches in my career sort of came naturally in some way because, when I first started at the Pulitzer Center, I was working as a special projects coordinator. And the projects that I was working on, which is a grant that's related with China. And very quickly, I think I just started noticing if I want to have a career in nonprofit journalism in America, China is going to be a very small piece of cake on this like really huge cake. So in order to break into the major market, I think I always try to push myself into thinking what are my skills and how can I apply my skills into the bigger market. That's why I internally basically asked our leadership back at the Pulitzer Center that whether or not they would consider me as their first marketing person, which also taking advantage of me having design experience from China, and I was pretty good at printing design because I was back to the day when journalism school still had focus. I was a newspaper focused journalist major, so I learned everything about InDesign back days, and I know how to do book publishing because I had some side gigs with book like designers. So I quickly learned that like if I want to apply that skill, how can I do that within the current organization, which I was also limited by my visa, that if I need to transfer to another organization, it's just going to be a lot of burden. So just to work with what I have at the moment, I thought marketing is the right direction, at least at that moment. And then I worked in the marketing and comms position for another 2-3 years and started noticing that I don't really want to work in a comms position like forever. Especially if you really want to break into communications, you do need to have like really good English writing skills, which I think is really not my strength until this day. I still feel like every time when I need to write something, I need like literally calm myself down before I can actually get on a Google sheet. So I feel that's not what I want to do. At the same time, I think I also found my passion in inclusion and diversity work. That's how I switched my gear into inclusion manager with them. And really, by able to identify the problem within the organization and knowing I am like equipped, knowing that I can go learn and equip myself to fit in that position. That was, very interesting for me. And I always think like I'd like to take that kind of challenge to push myself a little bit further because, as an immigrant, I don't think I have the privilege just to sit around, like just do whatever I have, like take the same job forever. That's just not my personality as well. So those transitions kind of just like naturally happened. And then, once I started to find inclusion is my passion, with International Women's Media Foundation, now my job, are solely about pushing women's career and in journalism. And I think that's just one step further, like built on what I have accomplished at the Pulitzer Center. So yeah, like happy to be in the current position. I've never done, press freedom advocacy work in the past. And as a Chinese, it's just the kind of naturally I'm in a disadvantage in this position to speak up. But at the same time, I am learning how to do those things. I'm learning how to speak up for Asian American in journalism. by my affiliation with the Asian American Journalism Association, and knowing I will be able to make the further steps if I want to just to continue pushing in this track. I don't know whether or not I'm gonna switch track again. Who knows? Like I feel like as an immigrant, just like literally go with the flow. Whatever happens next will happen, and at the same time, try to make the current situation work as much as possible to my advantage.
And Jin, I want to take you back again to a Pulitzer Center. How do you, make yourself skillful so that you could smoothly climb that corporate ladder?
I don't think I actually mastered that yet. I definitely, struggled a lot in the beginning of my career, not really knowing how to negotiate at all, and not knowing what my value is, like how much I value for the company. I always feel like I'm an immigrant, like I'm at a disadvantage. They're paying my visa, they're paying my green card. Like there's so much money they're already spending on me. Can I ask for more? I think until recent years, I think finally I'm like, okay, I do think I have some value with all the institutional knowledge. I have all the, I am very driven. So I know I work really hard, and I know that, they can trust me. I'm very trustworthy. And with all those things lined up, I was like, maybe I could ask for a little bit more. So yeah, like I think that's just definitely, and I mean, like just as I said, like Asian American Journalism Association was like life changing for me to be able to witness what other people can achieve, at the same time knowing, oh, actually, you know what, I could negotiate. That's like the new door open for me. I haven't still mastered the climbing up the ladder thing. I'm only a manager, and I hope one day I'll become director. So by that time, maybe you can ask me that question.
Okay, maybe in our second season, we're gonna have you again and then ask the same question.
You just mentioned about understanding your values. Definitely, I believe that many of our audience would agree with me. So we struggle to understand our value. What would your message be? How can I understand what I am worth?
Yeah, I think that's like a question not only relevant to immigrants, but also as women, as Asian women who came from a culture that just literally you should not be asking for anything. It's really difficult. I think at one point I just like, there's always a slogan basically saying like, when you go into a job interview, you just think about what a mediocre white man would ask. Like I would literally do that all the time, and I would always think like when I want to ask something, I always think like, is it okay? But then the second thought would be like, if I'm a guy, I would definitely ask that. Like so I always tell me that. Sometime when I write emails, that I don't know whether or not I'm taking the right tone, because I apologize a lot in my emails. I'm sorry. I think I'm doing this. Like I don't know whether or not this is correct, but like really having a white male peer to read your email response to the HR, and he would edit a lot of things out from that email, and you would just be like, oh yeah, right, I should not apologize, like I deserve this. And I was just thinking like, this is completely normal, that you should be entitled to ask those questions. I struggle with that, but I think I'm getting better just by every day telling myself I deserve more.
When do you realize that, when you were asking something more, that it would be okay to ask that?
I think at one point I in the office, I become one of the only person stayed as long as a junior staff. That's the point I was like, wow, I think I worth more, because I'm just being able to pull that off for so many years. I think my loyalty said everything, and knowing what I could not leave. And knowing I am an immigrant, all those things fact together, I'm like, well, I think I'm going to ask for more.
Any strong message from your personal experience to the newly arriving young immigrants in the United States?
Yeah, I think no matter you're new or have been in here for a little bit, just really think about not only yourself, really think about how you can help other people. Like, don't think like, oh, I'm new, so I could not help others. That's just a wrong start. I really believe, like, community building. I really believe, getting, like, gather a group of people together. Like, last year, a bunch of, like, Chinese journalists started Chinese Storytellers as a group. Really knowing, by, like, bulking up your voice, that really will make you be heard. That's valuable. At the same time, no matter what kind of position you're in, you have climbed up some ladder, and you should leave that ladder behind for someone else to climb up as well. And really think about that. I can always, basically connect myself with another immigrant at any moment, because, in this country, nothing is easy. And being an immigrant, you're naturally in a disadvantage for so many things. But at the same time, we're also in advantage of so many things. Like, we speak different language. We may have an accent that only means we're awesome that we speak another language. And we, like, we need to go through a visa process, but also at the same time, like, I'm worthy of that. Like, you'll do my visa, you'll do my, like, you'll pay me a higher price, but I'll make sure that my work worth what you asked for. And that two things line up perfectly for immigrants, because we know we're all hard workers for us to even survive on this land.
Right. And Jin, at the end, I just came across one of the recent articles you have written where you mentioned about, how like American journalists in China, they were evicted, but which was covered widely, but there are so many Chinese journalists covering in America. They are also kind of forced to, get out of America, but this hasn't been covered yet. Do you want to say something more on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think journalism is a very, traditionally white and Western dominate industry, which is a problem, like, not only in journalism, but also in other places as well. So you will see, the hierarchy in journalism has always been there, and it's not really playing in advantage of, foreign journalists, especially Chinese journalists, because many of them cannot really practice journalism in China, or, like, cannot have their, like, deserved bylines on the articles they worked on as research assistant, in those newsrooms. So I do see in the current clash between China and the US, the international relationship part, journalism has become a new battlefield for both governments. That Chinese government kicked out American journalists. US government has been limiting journalism visa to Chinese nationals. I think those two are tied with each other, and it's really disappointing to see the US media, like, at least kind of ignored, or, like, not really covering the counterparts they have, in the US for, like, Chinese journalists. And it's unfortunate, and I would say anyone who has a vote in November, do your job, because, this policy cannot stay. It's kind of, basically a huge big backsteps that America is taking press freedom in every direction, not only in journalism visa, but also we see that they're police targeting at journalists in those protests. Like, those things need to get rid of as soon as possible.
And at the end of the podcast, if anybody wants to reach out to you for any career advice, what would be the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm happy to, talk with anyone, especially whoever is a journalist of color wants to, understand more about journalism grants. I can definitely help on there, not only for International Women's Media Foundation's grants, but also, I've been in, like, journalism grants field for like 7-8 years now, so I do understand a lot about other grants as well. So feel free to get in touch with me of my work email, jding at iwmf.org, which is also, it's on my profile page at my job. So feel free to get in touch.
Thank you so much for sharing your personal and professional experience. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for interviewing me. I really look forward to hear more of your podcast.
Thank you so much, Jin.
So with that, it's time to say bye-bye. But before we say bye-bye, we have a request to make.
So if you have any particular feedback about this episode, feel free to reach out on our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, even our website podcast@theendoftheday.com.
And please make sure to subscribe and share the podcast.
Hello, I'm Ian Hull from the U.S. Census Bureau. Beginning on March 12th, everyone in the country will be invited to respond to the 2020 census. You'll have the ability to respond to the census over the phone, online, or using a paper form. It is incredibly important that everyone is counted. Make sure you, your family members, and your neighbors are counted in this critical census. We only get one chance every 10 years to conduct the census. This is your chance to be counted.